a new world order, which is the code name for this conspiracy, and God, it's coming out their mouths all over the place at the moment, isn't it? We need a new world order. You do surprise me. So, this Second World War, the same families and networks were behind Soviet communism, were behind the United States, were behind Britain and the so-called Allies, and they were behind Nazi fascism. They put Hitler in power. They funded Hitler. How did Germany go from the Weimar Republic, where they were taking their wages home in wheelbarrows, such was the inflation, to a war machine that took on Europe? Because it was externally funded by people like the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers funded Adolf Hitler's race purity expert, Ernst Rudin, on a whole floor of a German university to come up with his race purity crap. And it was funded by the Rockefellers in America. Because once you realize that this force is working through all sides, like we've just seen with that image, it suddenly is no longer a contradiction that a so-called American family, they have no allegiance to America, they have allegiance to their agenda, an American family would fund and create the war machine that then took on and killed so many Americans as well as so many other people. It's not a contradiction anymore when you know how the game works. And because they brought these two together, they created a massive global problem which allowed them to offer a massive global solution. All those United Nations, like the League of Nations after the First World War, and all the Bretton Woods Agreement, the World Bank, the IMF, and all this stuff, was justified, including the European Union. Let's come together in Europe and we'll stop a war. Let's come together and have a central control of Europe, which we've just fought a war to stop. All came together, justified by stopping war in Europe. And now we have another version of it, which I call no problem reaction solution, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. You don't need even a real problem, you just need the perception of the problem to get the public to support, or at least not to efficiently reject what you want to do to change society. And this, now we are facing a presidential version of problem, reaction, solution. To put that in the light, I can see what I'm bloody doing now. I kept looking at my watch and misreading the time. I was very proud of that. I don't want to read the time, really. I want to stay here forever. I'm just getting started. What we've seen in America is presidential problem, reaction, solution. They brought Bush in just as a front man, fronting up these neoconservative, neocon people that were behind the Bush era and the invasion of Iraq and all this stuff, and Afghanistan. And his job, or that group's job, was to create massive problems, not least foreign wars and stretching them militarily, but also to create massive financial problems towards the end of the Bush administration, which is exactly what they did. And then there's a massive problem, there's great fear and anxiety, and then they bring in the used car salesman with the big smile and the dark eyes and very good at reading teleprompters called Barack Obama. And you know, there were people, I got a little stick when I started talking about Obama and his background a few months ago, because, you know, it was like criticizing Jesus at the time. Not quite so much now, mind. People I thought knew better actually believed that this man could come out of nowhere and, as a genuine man with taking the country in a different direction for good for the people, would somehow attract the biggest funding of any presidential candidate in American history. And most of it came from Wall Street. Now, I ask this, do turkeys really vote for Christmas if they are aware that that's what they're doing? No. They funded him because he is just a front man for them. And he's done very well. This was his greatest, you see, because of the problems of the Bush era, this was his greatest asset. Anybody but Bush. And so what they did was sell this fantasy. This man comes out of the most corrupt, political system in America and further afield to Chicago. You cannot prosper in Chicago politics unless you are corrupt and or you will do whatever those behind you say you should do or say. What they did was turn him into an empty screen. And they did it by simply using key words. I stand for change. Now, that's a good one. Because the way the system works, at any point in time, most people are sick to death of the status quo. So anyone coming along and saying, I stand for change, well, at least we'll have him because we don't like the way things are. It's very powerful. That's what Clinton used to get to power. I stand for change. And stand for hope. Now, hope is a good thing. We must hope. No, we mustn't hope. Hope's in the future that doesn't exist. Hope is always the horse on the carousel that's just a bit in front of yours and you're never going to catch it up. Hope is a holding position from real change. That's what hope is. He's an empty suit. But because at no point did he define in any detail what hope, what change, what something to believe in really meant, because if he did, they say, oh, if that's what it means, I'm not having that. Keep it simple. And what they did brilliantly was to create a blank screen on which the American people, or vast numbers of them, projected what hope, something to believe in, and change meant to them. So they turned him into all things to all people. And then once he is elected, well, bugger all that, we've got power now, and everything goes on as before. The rhetoric's different, the words are different, but what is happening is exactly the same as in the Bush era in all the basic things. Change, change, change. It's all mind control. You look at that, and what you are being told on a subconscious level is, he stands for change, something we can believe in. And that is there to influence your conscious mind eventually into voting for the guy. This is what Adolf Hitler said. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. It's just the same technique that's been used over and over again. The wolf found that shepherd's clothing worked even better. And that's what he is. Oh, he's such a nice man. Oh, I love you, Barack. Well, that's good. Let's love everybody, but let's be streetwise as well. He's just a front man for the gang who funded him in the Patriot Act, this Orwellian abomination. Yes, he's supporting the furtherance and continuance of that and all the rest of it. And what has he done since he got in? Hurl money at the banks. This is the truth. This is what Barack Obama is really about, and more people are seeing that, and even the people with their eyes closed, I don't want to know, shut up, are going to have to face it eventually. This is the guy behind Barack Obama, or one of the key men behind Barack Obama. Zbigniew Brzezinski, who is a massive insider within this network I'm talking about, Jimmy Carter's national security advisor. How ironic he stands here and contemplates that Barack Obama is now sending thousands more troops into Afghanistan to overcome the problem. Ah, really? Well, his best mate here, who picked him up in the 80s and with others has brought him through to be president, it was always planned, has gone public some years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago, in a Paris magazine, admitting that when he was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, he decided that he wanted, in his words, to give the Soviet Union their Vietnam. So what he then did was, own words, he funded and trained what were called freedom fighters, became known as the Mujahideen, in Afghanistan. He did this once a few months ago, and he spent most of his life just meditating. I mean, that's an option. It's not something I choose to do, but it's an option. I mean, we can do that. And what it did was help him see the difference between mind and consciousness. And he said, mind is consciousness which is put on limitations. You are originally unlimited and perfect. Later you take on limitations and become the mind. Perfect. That's what we do. So we can start to see, and I'll get more into this in the last section, we can start to see how we can turn this bloody key and open this door, which you can't do unless you get into these deep levels of understanding the nature of reality. And Einstein said, a human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feeling as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. And that's exactly what it is, an optical delusion. So it's not just freeing our mind, it's freeing ourself from mind, or freeing ourselves from the domination of mind on our sense of perception. And, you know, all the way through what we call history, these basic truths have been repeated. It's nothing new, it's just we're getting more to understand them in the mainstream. We have these vortex systems called chakras, wheels of light, the word means, which connect us into the energy level of us from the body computer. And the key connection is through what we call the heart chakra here. So people talk about love and they symbolize the physical heart. Actually, that comes from originally from this heart vortex, the understanding that this is the seat of connection to consciousness. There are other connections as well, like the right side of the brain, which I'll get to shortly. But the heart is a key connection. And it's the difference between the head and the heart is the difference between thought, particularly left brain thought, which is what most people are stuck in, and intuitive, the word again, knowing. How many times do we just know that we've got to go somewhere, that we know we ought to do this, that we know we really ought to do that? And this is going, you can't do that, you've got a mortgage, you've got a cat, what will your mother think, what will the people on the bar think? And it's talking this out, oh yeah, okay. And the thing that changed my life 20 years ago, dramatically, is when I made one decision. Every time my head and my intuitive knowing are at odds, I'm going with this, every time. And what happens, and it happened with me, when you follow this, you can get in some interesting situations in this world of head when you're coming from another point of perception. And this is going, see, told you what happened if you didn't listen to me, there you go. But if you keep with it, eventually, your life becomes this synchronistic journey which takes you to places that you want to go, and after a while, this observes and it goes, hold on a second, you might get into some scrapes when you follow this, but it all works out in the end. And it all works out not because or despite the scrapes you got into, but because of them. And at that point, the head and the heart come into alignment, and you think and feel the same thing. The war ends that most people are in. The heart has its own energy field. There's far more to the heart, even the physical heart, than ever people have understood, even genetically. And when I'm talking about love, I'm not talking about I love you, saw you down the disco, darling, not that. I'm talking about a level of love that you really have to experience, because there's no words to describe it. And when I was in that ayahuasca state, the opening line of this female voice was, the only thing you really need to know is infinite love is the only truth, everything else is illusion. In other words, the existence of one infinite consciousness, that's the only truth. Everything else is illusion. It's the manifestation and manifestations of that consciousness in many and various ways, but the manifestations are the illusion. The consciousness is the base reality of everything. And one of the line from one of my books, love is not something you're in, it is something you are. That's the difference. It's interesting, I've talked to people who work in mind control and stuff, or used to, and they tell me that if you stimulate a certain part of the brain, you can get anyone to fall in love with anyone, as long as they stimulate their part of the brain as well. You'll get this attraction. It's electrochemical attraction. We call it love. It's actually attraction. Love is something beyond what we perceive to be love in this world. And when we close the heart, and fear and stress and all that stuff close the heart chakra very, very powerfully, that's when we end up. And also fear of being different means fear of following the heart intuition because of what people will say about you because you're acting in ways that are different. And that's that puts us in these eggshells. And when we open the heart, we're dealing with a level of love, call it cosmic love, unconditional love. There are many descriptions for it, but it's love that you have to feel to understand what it is, and I'm sure many people in this room have, although it's fleeting within the world sometimes that we experience. And when we open up, then we connect with all that is, and then we start to access levels of intuitive awareness that start to make the complex world of things and apartness become, whoa, that's how it goes together then. And without that, we're just lost in confusion, lost in the world of mind, which sees everything in apartness. I was in the bath last year, because I have one occasionally, and I'm sitting there with me duck or whatever, and don't know what I was doing, and I got this real clear picture in my mind from nowhere. First of all, there was this billowing energy, which I took to be consciousness. Why, I don't know, but that's what came. And then an eye appeared in this energy. And then in front of the eye came a telescope. And at the end of the telescope was this world, this earth and this universe and all the rest of it. And then the telescope morphed into a human body. And I got Neil Haig to paint it for me. And that's so symbolic of what we experience in this reality. We are experiencing a certain kind of experience with this reality gives to us. And there's nothing wrong with the experience. It's fine. I mean, it's an experience. But what the body does is it telescopes us into a certain range of frequencies and therefore perception. And through the body, we see the world in a very different way. Now, we can use the telescope, the body, knowing that it's a telescope, in which case we've got consciousness and we've got the telescopic, if you like, apartness experience. But when consciousness is no longer connected, we're just left with a telescopic view of everything. And that's why we see things in such narrow terms all the time when we cease to be consciousness. And the energy field, or the energy of we are, connects into the body through things like the endocrine system and the pineal gland, which people connect to the third eye of psychic sight and all the rest of it. And that's how we connect into the computer. We have an auric field, and the lower auric field in the body, that's what I call body awareness, because the body is not just what we call a physical body, it's also an energy field. And together, that's what I will refer to as the mind. And it's interesting, when you put an electrical charge through a wire, it throws out a magnetic field, an electromagnetic field. And of course, this is now well known, down the central nervous system through what we call the crown chakra, right down through and out the base chakra, there is energy, electrical energy going through all the time, and it throws out this electromagnetic field. That together, I would suggest, is what we call mind. And it's the same with the earth. For reasons I'll get to in this section, everything is a mirror of everything else. Same thing happens with the earth. You have that electromagnetic charge, which becomes the energy field of the earth. Now, when we open this auric field and connect to the wider levels of consciousness, then we have everything we need. But the way the world is manipulated, coldly and calculatedly, is designed to close that auric field so that we operate only in that level of awareness that I call the mind. And that's how the few control the many. And when we operate within the mind, we basically go round and round and round in what we call life, following the programs of the mind. And he said to him, when you wake up, you're not going to know how to drive a car. gets in the car, he doesn't know where to put this key to start the bloody thing. Because his mind's decoding system has been intervened in to program that state of being. They then come back in the studio, and Hammond's having a laugh, and he thinks it's all very funny, and he thinks it's over, except that the programming's still in there. So they're sitting there live in the studio, and they're chatting away, and McKenna does his thing again, and Hammond goes, and he tells Hammond that this car, this toy car, is his real 911 Turbo or something. And he goes across, and he gets in the car, acting as if it's his car, and then this other guy comes in another toy car and smacks him in the side. And Hammond reacts as if his real car's just been smacked. That's the power that you can program the body computer with, and that's what's happening to the human race all the time. We are, those that are not waking up, we are in a hypnotic trance. And that's why people can't see the bloody obvious. Try telling Richard Hammond that wasn't his real car. When you're in a hypnotic stage show, and I've been to many researching this, try telling the guy that he's not seeing an elephant in the audience. As Voltaire said, so long as the people do not care to exercise their freedom, those who wish to tyrannize will do so, for tyrants are active and ardent, and will devote themselves in the name of any number of gods, religious or otherwise, to put shackles upon sleeping men. And so putting us to sleep hypnotically is fundamental to it. And that's why this phrase, people are waking up, is so absolutely accurate. That's what we're doing. We're waking up from the trance. And when the guy who thinks there's an elephant in the audience wakes up from the trance, there's no elephant anymore. He can see reality in a different way. It's about keeping us in a hypnotic state. And here's a hypnotist. Television, that people don't know it, 99.9% of them don't know it anyway, they are hypnotists. They are implanting into the mind, through a real powerful form of mind control called repetition, a version of the world and reality that, if we take it on, puts us all in the same norm of perception. All the time, 24/7, wherever you go. Me, 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 me. Same repeating things. 19 hijackers who couldn't fly Cessnas suddenly manifested the ability to fly wide-bodied jets. Over and, oh, yeah, see, yeah, don't know where it came from, honey, but they just managed to, they must have read a book. And then you have, in America, on the left, they are Democratic supporting news presenters, and these in Fox, of course, are far, far right-wing supporting presenters, and they are apparently putting different points of view, but together they see the system in the same way. They just want to come from it from a slightly different angle. And that is constantly mind-controlling the body computer to believe that there are sides in the world and there are differences and stuff, and take us away from the understanding that behind it all, there's one force manipulating through all sides. Then you've got people like Jon Stewart. Some of his shows are very funny, and this guy, Bill Maher. These are perceived to be, I call them steam whistles. You let off a bit of steam and frustration because they have fun and satirize the political system, but only to a point. So he'll satirize, but as soon as he gets someone in the studio, like Tony Blair a few months ago, he basically licks his backside instead of asking serious questions, which he's asking when the guy isn't there. Come on. And Bill Maher, why he's against, ridiculing the system and all that, and politicians, he vehemently attacks anyone who says that 9/11 was not, the official story was not true. And so all these different forms and media of all different kinds, and sometimes they seem to be different, are all selling you basically the same belief system on the way the system works. And as a result of this mind control technique called repeating, so many people believe things they've never checked, never asked about, never questioned in any way, but because it's the norm, because everyone believes it, it becomes their truth. Oscar Wilde, great English writer, said, most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions, their lives are mimicry, their passions are quotation. That's what happens when we just repeat without question. We have teacher repeaters who just repeat what they are told to tell the children and what they learn themselves in their academic life and in teacher training. We have doctor repeaters that just repeat what the drug companies tell them and what they learned at medical schools. Medical schools can, well, I'll perhaps even be right the first time. Medical schools controlled by the drug companies. We have scientist repeaters repeating the bloody nonsense that a tiny, tiny greenhouse gas called carbon dioxide from human form somehow is transforming the bloody climate of the planet. Repeat, repeat, repeat. But classically, journalist repeaters just repeating the official story and calling it journalism, no questions asked. Politician repeaters. I love this one. They've been bent over for so long they think it's standing up. Politician repeaters. I mean, you question politicians about climate change. You know, have you ever done any research into it? No, but it's what the scientists say. So we're passing this legislation. You ever thought about checking it? No. Repeaters, repeaters, repeaters. And then we have people repeaters who take it from these sources and then repeat it among themselves. And then if someone challenges that repetition version of reality, they get ridiculed and condemned for the crime of being different. And a few people can't control the world. It's a piece of cake, given the way things are. And this is why the authorities want to stop people talking publicly in ways that are at odds with the mainstream belief of repeating. This is why so-called visionaries have always been seen as dangerous by the authority of the day, because they're offering another possibility of reality that is at odds with the one reality that tyrannies and dictators always want the public to believe. So all these sources are constantly programming the body computer, the mind, with the version of reality that the system wants, and therefore giving us this false identity that keeps us in servitude. As this man said, we see things not as they are, but as we are. Because as we are dictates how we decode reality and therefore perceive experience. The mind sees everything in terms of division. So when we're in mind, we're in a society of division. When we are in the now, consciousness, that sees everything as one, because that's what consciousness is. The infinite I. So who do we think we are? We think we're humans. But who are we? We are consciousness. And to perceive reality and live our lives from those two perspectives brings a dramatic difference in the way we see ourselves and life. Okay, move along. Where are we? We're in a virtual reality universe, which only exists in our head in the physical sense that we perceive. We are decoding vibrational and electrical information into this apparently physical world that only exists in this form in our heads. One level it's digital, and like I say, electrical signals decoded by our brain. So that's where this world actually resides. And it's understandable. I'm standing here now, and everything seems to be outside of me. Everything seems to be out there. But that's an optical illusion. Everything is not out there, it's in here in terms of the physical world. It is within us, everything is within us. So this age-old line that goes right the way back through the ages, what we call the ages, to go within, is a stunningly accurate truth. Because it's the biggest creator of this energetic state that they want. The Matrix talked about feeding off human energy and all the rest of it, turning humans into batteries. And that's what we're looking at in terms of the way the society is created. There are many physical underground areas which have been reported to contain reptilian and non-human entities, and I'm sure that's true within this reality, within visible light, but it's the ones that are just outside that seem to be the cause of this. There are many reptilian entities that seem to be very benevolent too. But the foundation of it all is puppet people. Without this, none of this other garbage could actually happen. That is prime. And the idea is to constantly take us in the wrong direction, make us misunderstand ourselves and reality so we act in the ways that suit them, to be in this bewildered state. The world is crazy, we think it's sane. So, God, I wish I had till midnight. Could keep going. So much, it all connects. So, it seems to be a bewildering world, and totally chaotic. And on the play-out side, it does seem to be like that, yes. But it's not really, if you take a step back. And the key thing that I try to get across all the time are what I call coordinates, key coordinates. Once you have these coordinates, the crazy kind of complex, what's it all about world starts to take on a serious level of clarity. How a few control the world, pyramid power. The idea, if you look at the way they've structured society, both collectively and individually, whether it's a school or a university or a government or a corporation, they structure them as pyramids. And on a collective level, they have, it's that thing here. I've been told I have to be very careful here or I'll shut the whole thing down. That's really good, isn't it? They make a piece of technology, and right next to the laser pointer is a button that will shut the whole thing down. I never went to university. But, okay, this opens the door and this activates the nuclear weapon, okay? The way they've structured is to hoard the knowledge, this advanced knowledge, both of what we'll be talking about now and what we talked about in the first section, in the highest levels of these pyramid structures that they've created. Every organization virtually today is a pyramid. You've got the few at the top who know what the game's really about, and as you come down from those few, you meet more and more and more people in these different structures, but as you go down, they know less and less and less about what the organization's really about. They're just going in, making their contribution, and going home. They don't know how their contribution locks into this contribution and that contribution, again, all innocent in and of themselves, to create anything but an innocent picture. Only they know that. So what they've done is hoarded the knowledge, not least through the secret society network, and they've sucked as much of that knowledge out of circulation as they can. And their nightmare now is it started to come back. Too bloody bad. Guys, it's about time. And this guy, Albert Pike, who was a Freemasonic god in America in the 1800s, Sovereign Grand Commander, Mother Supreme Council of the World, and all this stuff. They love their titles, these people. Pathetic. And he wrote this. This was in a book for Freemasons. Fictions are necessary to the people, and the truth becomes deadly to those who are not strong enough to contemplate it in all its brilliance. In fact, what can there be in common between the vile multitude and sublime wisdom? The truth must be kept secret, and the masses need a teaching proportional to their imperfect reason. That's what they do, is hoard the advanced knowledge and give us a fake version of reality. And this is the structure which shows, and I'm probably being bloody optimistic where I put these people. These are the levels of presidents and prime ministers and head of NATO and stuff. This is where, within the bloodline network and the shadow people right at the top, you never see, this is where the real power is. And these people who appear to be in power are actually just vehicles to introduce what is decided there into mainstream society. George Bush is a classic. Oh, hey, there he is, synchronicity. He's the next one. So people said, George Bush is Big Brother. What? You can't tie his shoelaces. No, he's not Big Brother. He's just a front man. And if you are in the public eye as a president and prime minister, you are by definition a front man. They don't put their key people there. They put gophers there. They might be in on it, a lot of them, and some of them don't. They're just manipulated, and some of them just want power and will do anything necessary for it. So they'll say, you know, we'll put you in power if you do this. Okay, okay, and so they'll become prime minister or president. And so now it's no different. This guy reads teleprompters better than George Bush did, but apart from that, policy is pretty much the bloody same, hidden by rhetoric. And in every country, including Australia, Britain, everywhere, you have overwhelmingly two parties, usually, that have any chance of forming a government. And so people think, oh, we're going to change to them now, we'll change to them now. But the same force controls both sides, so whoever's in power is a representative of this force in the shadows. As some people say in America, you know, don't vote, it only encourages them. You know, I've not voted for years, it's a waste of time. Do you want this mask on the face or do you want that mask on the face? No, thanks. I'll go home, thanks, have a cup of tea. Do a lot more good than voting for either of them. This guy, David Roskopf, is a former managing director of Kissinger Associates, a notorious Illuminati company, and he wrote this book last year called Superclass, in which he talked about a power elite that was making the world, but it was a cover story. It's becoming so blatant now that a few are running the show that this was a book to divert people away. Oh yes, there is an elite, but they're not connected, they're just loosely because they all don't. Oh, shut up. It's fundamentally controlled, man. Go away, take your check, leave me alone. And so this is how they've structured global society, of a series of pyramids within pyramids within pyramids, like Russian dolls, one inside a bigger doll, inside a bigger doll, inside a bigger doll. And so in the end, all these different pyramids of media, banking, politics, education, media, religion, all the rest of it, intelligence agencies, the pharmaceutical industry, all of it, they all are pyramids, and eventually they all answer to the same pyramid peak, which are these Illuminati families. And through this structure, they can put down from that point the same policies of incessant centralization of power and other changes in society, which here, as we experience them, seem to be coming from unconnected groups and institutions and places of society, when if you go to that point, they're all coming from the same point, and that's why it's so coordinated, and that's why now it's happening so quickly, because it's so coordinated. So what you have is one force manipulating in the play-out world of the daily experience, often apparently people in conflict with each other. It's all a game, it's all a mind game. This is the movie I talked about earlier, and this is the secret agenda that manipulates the movie to manipulate human perception in the same way that we've seen here in that image. And these people, in the end, are just puppets of this force. And like I say, I'll just go back on that one, but only quickly. This is to emphasize the point that because of their genetic makeup and energetic makeup, and the way that I now begin to understand they're connected to this schism energy in terms of their perception, this is why they can do these things and have no emotional consequence whatsoever, because they appear to have a very low, at least low, sometimes non-existent level of empathy with the consequences for others of their actions. Another coordinate, methods of manipulation. I think one of the most effective things I've ever come up with in this whole 20 years is this description of problem, reaction, solution, because it is so fundamental to pushing this whole thing on. And it's very simple. Everybody in this room will know about it, but just go for it, because we're doing a DVD of this as well. So we'll, for people watching the DVD who haven't come across this before, maybe It's very simple. You want to change society in a way that you know that if you announce it openly, you're going to get a massive public reaction against it. So you don't do that. Stage one, you create a problem covertly. You get someone else to be blamed for it. It could be 9/11, it could be a government collapse, it could be the economic crisis we're having now, it could be a war. You then tell, through an unquestioning, pathetic mainstream media, the version of the problem you want the public to believe, i.e. bin Laden orchestrated it from a cave in Afghanistan or something. And if we had a media worth the name, problem, reaction, solution would collapse. Because at this point, they would investigate the official version, find it was a Amos, later became known as Jesus in the Christian stories, and when this Babylonian Trinity was taken to Rome, as the bloodlines moved to Rome and founded the Christian church, they changed the names, but basically the same religion remained. This is a depiction of the moon goddess and the sun god, the star, the sun there, which is an original depiction from Ur in what is now Iraq, Sumer, Babylon, from 2000 BC, and this is the international symbol of Islam to this day. When you get deeper into it, these are all different masks, again, on the same face of the moon and sun religions. This is Mormonism. In America, again, the sun and moon symbolism is all over their symbols in Salt Lake City, etc. So when you see Mother Mary and Jesus, what you're looking at is a depiction of Queen Semiramis, the goddess of Babylon, and Nimrod stroke Tammuz, because they said that Nimrod, when he died, became the sun god Baal and impregnated Semiramis with the rays of the sun. That's where the virgin birth comes from, and she gave birth to the reincarnation of Nimrod, which became known as Tammuz, and that's why in Christianity they talk about father and son being one, because that comes from the Babylonian symbolism of that. That's where Isis, the virgin mother of Egypt, and Horus, the sun in Egypt, comes from. It's the same recurring themes, and all across the world, the mother, the virgin mother, and the baby religions follow, and they all come from the same source, and because they project it in a different way, people think that they're different religions, but they're the same basic religion. Consciousness, I mean, this is the point I would stress. Consciousness doesn't do religion, mind does religion. And this is an ancient depiction of Queen Semiramis, the goddess of Babylon, and I think I've seen her somewhere else before. The Statue of Liberty, a mirror depiction of Queen Semiramis, was given to New York by French Freemasons in Paris who knew exactly what it represented, the goddess of Babylon. And there you go, and there's the mirror image of the Statue of Liberty on an island in the River Seine in Paris to this day. The goddess of the French Republic, same thing. The goddess Freedom on the top of the Capitol building, same thing. The goddess Columbia, the goddess of the District of Columbia, same thing. In the Vatican, because of course the Roman Church is the Church of Babylon relocated, and they use different names for the same stories, they depicted Semiramis in Babylon as a dove, and of course Nimrod was the sun, and this is, you see in the Vatican, the dove and the sun, that's Semiramis and Nimrod, same thing. So Nimrod was the sun god, and you see him all over the place as well. The symbol of Nimrod in Babylon was the flame or the lighted torch. And that's why the Statue of Liberty is holding a lighted torch, the torch of Nimrod, and he's actually standing, when you see from above, on a depiction of the sun. And that, you see, the way they manipulate reality and sense of reality, Americans, understandably, look to the Statue of Liberty as a symbol of their freedom when it's a symbol of their enslavement. Same thing, holding Nimrod. And this is an exact and massive depiction of the flame held by the Statue of Liberty, and that's on top of the Pont d'Alma tunnel, and that's now where people take their tributes to Princess Diana, who died underneath it. Another way that Nimrod was depicted was as Dagon, the fish god. This is an original depiction from thousands of years ago, and that's just a kind of, obviously, a knocked-up symbol of it. And that's why we have this. Dagon, the fish god, the mitre. It's all the same symbolism of symbolizing Nimrod. The obelisks you find all over the place. The biggest obelisk in the world is the Washington Memorial opposite the White House. That's the penis of Nimrod Osiris, going back to that symbolism of the Credo necklace too. Nimrod aircraft, all the same things. And the religions were taken across the world and expanded, and they became the religious network that we have today, which ironically fight each other when actually they're all different masks on the same face, which ultimately connect into the same network. Same with the New Age. So much of the New Age is just the same manipulation. I call the New Age the last cul-de-sac before the gold mine. People who've rejected mainstream religion and rejected this world is all there is science, and are looking into things of vibration and stuff like that, and spirituality in another way, you've got to stop them, get into the gold mine. So you want a cul-de-sac to get them into, and it's become known as the New Age. And they also worship, and again, anything to do with this network is always, reptilian brain, hierarchical. And so we have hierarchical structures of power within the New Age structure of beings and entities and great white brotherhoods. It's all hierarchy. Consciousness doesn't do hierarchy. Mind does hierarchy. If you're into hierarchy, you're in mind, you're not in consciousness. Simple things. You can see whether it's conscious or not. And I love that the New Age Jesus, Sananda, looks exactly like the Jesus depicted by the Renaissance painters who hadn't got a clue what he bloody looked like anyway. So the idea is to use religion to keep people in mind and stop them connecting to consciousness. Because when you start talking about consciousness and the way consciousness sees the world, religions go, you can't say that, that's the devil. And all the rest of it, and fright people into acquiescing to rules and regulations of these religions. And again, in the end, all these religions, you go through them, and you're providing sustenance, energetic sustenance for the same entities. Same entities. It's a very true saying. Energy goes where attention goes, and worship is a really focused form of attention. And so when we're in worship, focusing on a deity, we might think the deity represents something, but it represents something else. Attention goes where, or energy flows where attention goes. 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 I mean, what an image for a religion to focus on. Someone being tortured. What are we doing? Let's think about it. What an image to focus a religion on. And like I say, religion is mind. That's why it's so schism-like, fractured. And they create them so they can play them off against each other. Trust Jesus. We know the truth. No, Judaism knows the truth. No, Islam knows the truth. No, this knows the truth. Play them off against each other. It's a divide and rule to put people in so many ways in that state. Religion has played a massive, massive part in this, cutting off the channels to consciousness. Oh, God, I wish I had lots of time. Okay. Coordinate. Secret society network and the religions worship the same gods because the same force controls the secret society network that controls the religions ultimately. So you have the Eye of Ra, which you see over and over again in the symbolism of the secret societies and the corporations they control. Again, that's the Vatican. There you see the Freemasonry thing, and that's in a Freemasons lodge in Boston. Same thing, it's the rising sun. This is the supreme headquarters of the 33rd degree in Washington, D.C., just down from the White House. And again, the rising sun symbol of the Illuminati and the secret society network. And that's why above the Downing Street door, you have that symbol, which is the symbol of the rising sun. We control Downing Street. That's the sun chair of George Washington, the first president of the United States, a high Freemason, and again, the same symbolism. And that's what you get on NBC News. That's the symbolism of that. That's the sun on a Boston Freemasonry lodge. Worship of the sun. This is the Mother Lodge of Freemasonry in London, from which Freemasonry went out across the colonies, Australia and America and all the rest of it, and they located it in Great Queen Street, which was one of the names in Babylon for Queen Semiramis, the moon goddess, Great Queen. And so when they created Virginia, and they said it was named after the Virgin Queen, Queen Elizabeth I, who was no more a virgin than Madonna, by the way, it's just a cover story. Virginia was named after the Virgin Queen of Babylon, Semiramis. And this is how they do it, by having these pyramids within pyramids, which mirror the secret society structure of levels of degree. And in the end, these secret societies that we know, like Freemasons and all these others, they feed a very chosen select few into another pyramid that is never talked about and is denied to exist, which is where the real action is, what I call the Illuminati pyramid, and that's where the real action and power is. You can also symbolize it as a spider's web. The spider at the center is where the control system comes out of. You never see that. You never see those people, and in the end they connect into these other dimensions of reptilian entities. On television stations broadcasting to Melbourne, I can't see them, they can't see each other, because they are operating on different frequencies. And when you tune into one of those frequencies, that's what you get. And what this physical body does is to tune us through that telescope I talked about earlier into and through the receiver-transmitter crystalline structure. It tunes us into this tiny range of frequencies called visible light, and this becomes the only reality. But interspersing this reality is all existence. And just outside of this frequency range, just beyond visible light, lie these reptilian entities and many other entities too. And you know, you'll be in a house and you'll see a cat, for instance, reacting to what is to us empty space. And you'll say, what's wrong with the cat? Don't be daft, nothing there. But to the cat there is something there, because its visual frequency range is much greater than ours, and therefore it's seeing things in the space that we can't see. And it's because this knowledge is kept from us that things that are happening in the world are dismissed as ridiculous, and people like me are dismissed as crazy, because it's a very simple, very powerful thing. And it sounds an obvious truth, but sometimes we miss the obvious truth. People's sense of what's possible comes from what they think is possible. And what they think is possible comes from the information they receive to tell them what is possible. If you suppress the knowledge of what is possible, you suppress their perception of what is possible, and they will laugh in the face of the truth and say it's impossible, when actually, if you understand to a greater level than the mainstream allows you to understand, you realize not only is it possible, it's perfectly bloody logical. So, just as we have ghosts, as we call them, which is energy just outside of our frequency range, and sometimes it just enters our frequency range and we can see it as ethereal. Whereas if it was absolutely on our frequency range, it would look as solid as you and me. It's like a radio station not being quite on the dial. You don't get a sharp reception, you get interference. And in the same way, these reptilian entities lock into these bloodlines and take over their mental and emotional faculties. I've talked to many psychics around the world who have the ability to go further out than the norm in terms of their decoding of sight. And they, many of them have told me how they've seen not just reptilian entities, but other entities too, non-human, who are what they call overshadowing humans as they observe them, and locking into these bottom two chakra points here, the base chakra and the one just above. And what they're doing, because the body's a hologram, is they're locking into that human energy field, and they're taking over its mental and emotional processes and perception processes. Now, let's go back. There you go. Oh yeah, we'll come to that in a sec. It's all about vibration and vibrational compatibility. These reptilian entities are vibrating to a certain frequency. Humans are vibrating to another frequency. What the hybrid idea is about is to infuse as much of this frequency, because that's what it's all about in the end, frequency, because that's the base prime reality of the hologram. It's to infuse as much of this frequency into this frequency to make them as compatible as possible, to allow this age-old recurring theme right up to the present day of possession to take place. And it's much easier to possess something that you are in vibrational resonance with, or much closer to it, than something that's very much further out. And so these hybrid bloodlines basically are there to create the vehicles that these reptilian entities just outside of this frequency can then take over. And they are manipulating this world through apparently human bodies, when if you could see further out, you would see anything but a human overshadowing these people that are in the positions of power. So these guys, I found this picture on the internet, it's very appropriate. These guys are basically empty shells. And they are vehicles to, I'm not saying every one of these are, but I think most of them are from what I'm looking at. But the basic theme is the people in positions of power are merely vehicles for something else that is in control of their faculties and control of their mind processes. So we have the advisors in the shadows within this reality, who really are in control of the people who appear to be in power. And then one step back from them, just outside of this visible light dimension, we have these entities that are calling the shots in so many ways through into this reality in terms of what happens here. And after, my experience of this explanation of the schism and all the rest of it, I refer to these now as the schism people. Because this schism resonates out down into this reality, this disharmonious conflict, chaos, and all the rest of it. And as it plays itself down into this reality, it manifests itself in various ways. And it is in those entities that lock into that schism energy, they manifest its state of being. They are expressions of it. And you find that these people do not have the basic values of compassion, empathy that most humans have, because they're locked into a deeply disharmonious and imbalanced consciousness that manifests out those values. And so to these people, pepper bombing Baghdad, they have no emotional consequence for that at all, because they have no empathy. Whereas we couldn't do it because we would have empathy with the consequences for others of their actions. And so they are operating on a completely different point of observation of life, reality, than we are. And therefore, anything goes with these people because of that. And these schism people, as they've taken control of human society, have created what? A human society that represents that schism. It's division. It's fighting with each other. It's trying to compete with each other, dominate each other, top dog, up the greasy pole. They're all manifestations of this basic energy disharmony. And so it goes up the levels from the human up through, eventually, to this schism energy. And all these things are manifestations within the decoded holographic world of the state of disharmony of this energetic schism, which has affected life in this reality, this part of it anyway, so fundamentally. So you have these reptilian entities, I'm sure other entities too, but the reptilian thing keeps coming up, who take over the thought process and mental processes. And we see the human, when we decode that energy field of human, but behind it is something looking very different. Someone sent me this picture. It may be just a play of the light, but it's symbolic of what so many people see. Some people see full body shifts. Talk to those people all around the world. But what seems to be the common theme more than anything is the eye shift, where they take on a reptilian type straight down pupil instead of the round one of the human, very much symbolized by this. And a few weeks ago, a scientist friend of mine called me and said he'd been chatting to an acquaintance of his who's just been doing, I mean, I don't agree with it, but he's just been doing research into iris scan technology, which led him to look very closely at 2,300 eyes as part of this research. And his friend didn't know anything about my stuff at all. He was just in a conversation, and he said that around 4% of the eyes that he looked at very closely appeared to be of reptilian type and appearance, which is maybe about the percentage we're looking at. Someone sent me this with Father George Bush. I don't know, I think that's, again, a play on the light, almost certainly, but so symbolic, because I know a number of people have seen this guy shift. Yeah, there's a magazine, it's called 40 Times or something. A few years ago, they ran this front page picture, you know, taking the mick out of me, and I said, thank you very much. That was very symbolic. I love that. Thanks very much. And so, you find a few of these pictures on the internet now as it gets around. Hey, there you go. And one of the things that I've looked at very closely over the years, particularly towards the end of the 80s and early across 2000 and so, are the mind control projects, and in the end they connect into these other dimensions of reptilian entities. Each of these strands represents an organization. The closer the strand is, the organization is to the spider, the more exclusive it is, and often if you get close enough to the spider, it doesn't even have a name, because it's very difficult to lock into something that doesn't have a name. As you come out, you're starting to hit things like Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, which interact directly with mainstream society. But all of these organizations, they get their orders and agenda from the spider, and so they work as one unit. And they've done that to the world as a result. The Jesuits are a major spider, close to the spider organization. That's the Black Pope, as they call him, the head of the Jesuits currently, Adolfo Nicholas, who more power than the real Pope. And so many politicians like these people, from Pierre Trudeau in Canada and Robert Mugabe in Clinton and these other people, John Kerry, are connected into the Jesuits. So's this guy, Joe Biden, the vice president currently. Another major secret societies are the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller of St. John of Jerusalem here, which is now known today as the Knights of Malta, and have their headquarters in Rome. These are the Knights Templar, and they control the City of London financial district and create mayhem as a result. And this is the temple area where they control law from, and this is the original Templar church that was made famous recently by the Da Vinci Code. And also, the Illuminati connect into Satanism. That's why so many of these famous people in the world take part in satanic ritual and human sacrifice and all this stuff, because these bloodlines have right the way through history, and they keep going and doing it. At one time they did it openly when they could, but now it's done extremely covertly and through this secret society network that it connects into, but it has its own structure also. And what they're doing is creating, this guy Vlad Dracul, by the way, who was famous for spearing people and impaling people and drinking their blood, back I think it was the 15th century in what is now Romania, and he was the inspiration of the Dracula stories, and he was and his family were key members of an organization called the Royal Court of the Dragon, or the Order of the Dragon, which actually goes back to ancient Egypt, at least to ancient Egypt. And this guy's sister comes through directly to the Mary of Teck, who is the present Queen of England's grandmother. She is a direct descendant of Vlad Dracul's sister, and I'm not surprised. things like this is kind of from a B movie, and all this stuff that you see, this actually goes on. One of the things that has, and you see it all around the world in history, and often connected to dragons, but not always. The thing that I found one of the hardest things to cope with originally, when I came across it, is not just that children are sacrificed in these rituals by these famous people and lots of not so famous people, or that child abuse is going on. What staggered me is the scale of it. It is extraordinary. And sometimes it's depicted too close to the truth, like in this Stanley Kubrick movie, Eyes Wide Shut, where he understated it, actually. But he included in this movie, and he died, actually, very soon after it was seen by the powers that be, of a heart attack. And I know from someone who's writing a biography of Stanley Kubrick in America that 15 minutes of it were removed after he died. So what did that say? These rituals with the rich and famous in the stately homes and other places are not going on every now and again here and there. They're going on all over the world, including Australia. And my understanding is Victoria is one of the centres for it in Australia, and it involves some very well-known people in this area, as it does everywhere, because this is a global thing. And one of the things they're doing in these rituals, and I've talked to people who've taken part in them, often against their will, what they're doing is they're creating an energy bridge between the entities, the reptilian entities and other entities that operate just outside visible light. The rituals are there to create an energetic bridge which allows them to enter this dimension and be seen and to be interacted with. And one of the ways is that symbol you see in Satanism, which is the pentagram with a circle round it, and other symbols, because we see them as symbols, but they have an effect on the energy field. If you could see it on an energetic level, you would see something very different that symbol is, geometrical symbol is creating, and it's through these symbols that they bring them through energetically into this dimension and interact with them. And the hierarchy of Satanism, hierarchy of the Illuminati, is based on the power of the demonic entities, as people call them, that you allow to take over your body. This is where the whole thing comes from, of selling your soul to the devil. You get the power and the prestige within this world up to a point, but you give yourself over to these demonic entities before you get that power. And then after you pass through, you become controlled by these entities when you leave the body. Now, this is in Sydney. I found this years ago. It dropped off my seat. This is a war memorial for the people who died in the 2 world wars, and this is the symbol in the middle of it, someone being sacrificed over an image of the sun. This symbolism is all over the place. Bohemian Grove, where they worship a 40-foot stone owl, which is symbolic of Queen Semiramis. This is an original Babylonian depiction of Queen Semiramis, and she's famous for being connected to owls. And there you have an owl on the street plan around the Capitol building in Washington. And if you look at another level of it, it's standing in the street plan on a pyramid. And this is symbolic of Queen Semiramis, with the Capitol building, American politics in its belly. And like I say, this is a global thing. This is Canberra, with the Capitol building at the top, the Parliament building at the top. Because the same force is controlling this country as is controlling America and Britain and all of them. So they use the same symbolism if you look for it. And these people, famous people, top people in banking, business, politics, presidents, go to Bohemian Grove in Northern California and worship this stone owl, Semiramis. You couldn't make it up. This is a picture from Bohemian Grove in 1957. That's a guy called Glenn Seaborg who developed plutonium. Cheers, Glenn. And there, at the time, 1957, is a B-movie actor called Ronald Reagan. And here's a career politician called Richard Nixon, just about to take Kennedy on in the 1960 election. Both Bohemian Grove members, and both go on to be presidents of the United States, no matter what their background. Presidents, like in every other country, are not selected by ballot, or elected by ballot. They're selected by blood and by Illuminati networks. It's amazing that this is David D's picture symbolizing the force behind it, but it's amazing that it's actually based on truth. And the reason it doesn't come out is because through the secret society network, they put their people in the key places in social services, the key places in police, the key places in coroners' offices and medical staff and all the rest of it. And they can then decide if things are investigated or prosecuted or just shut down. And that's why it never comes out, because they've stitched the whole system up. Okay, the agenda today, where are we? Okay. The agenda today, this is where we're going. They want a global, centrally controlled fascist dictatorship, that network and structure I've just been talking about. And they want a microchip population connected to a global computer. And the microchip is designed not just as electronic tagging, but to get access to the biological computer system to externally manipulate the way we think and our emotional state as well as physical state. And if we think that the robotic people are from the past, like the Nazis, well, this is China waiting for work in the morning. That's what they want to turn people into. In many ways, the Nazi and the Chinese situation is a blueprint for how they want the world to look when this new world order is in place. Pyramids of manipulation, this is how they do it, and through all that and secret agenda. They want a super-state agenda, I talked about that. European Union's the first one, and the European Union, Europe itself is named after Europa, and Europa is another word name for Queen Semiramis, and around the goddess, whether it's the Egyptian goddess or the Christian goddess that comes from Semiramis, are 12 stars symbolically going back thousands of years, and that's where the 12 stars of the European Union come from. They're the 12 stars of the moon goddess of Babylon. And Europa is depicted with the bull, who is symbolic of Nimrod, and on a coin in 2005 came out of the European Union, you had Europa and the bull, Nimrod and Semiramis. At the inner sanctum of all these organizations, they know exactly what they're doing. This is the Habsburg family, Otto von Habsburg, one of the major Illuminati families, and he was the one that started the Pan-Europa movement that created the European Union ultimately. Moved between the two. And the many images you find portrayed of this coming together of Earth women and this reptilian race, and part human, part non-human, and all the rest of it. These are just a few examples that have been sent to me from around the world, but crikey, there's loads and loads of them that portray the same basic symbol of, again, fighting the snake, fighting the dragon is all part of it. And of course, one of the key stories in the Bible is of the serpent in the Garden of Eden, which, when you read that story in the way it's portrayed, absolutely changed the way that humans acted and saw themselves in the world. When you see the symbolic way that it's talked about. And I was on a Christian radio station in America a few months back, and they say, oh no, serpents and all that stuff. Well, hold on a second. Do you think that if you believe the Garden of Eden story, and again, the Garden of Eden story told in different ways using different names, you can find that all over the world as well. Same recurring theme. And I said, do you really think that if you believe it to be, that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was a snake on the ground? Could you think it could be that could be symbolic of something? And it's just another example of the reptilian symbolism all over the place. And when you look at the castles and the stately homes of these bloodlines in the aristocracy, and also in the churches as well, and they're behind them, and they were behind the building of them, then again, you find these what we call gargoyles that have a reptilian feel about them. And the coats of arms of so many of these aristocratic families carry the dragon in various forms. Some people, and there is a lot of truth and accuracy in it, describe London as Babylondon, because that became the new center of this bloodline network. And that's why this tiny bloody country, just off the coast of Europe, had that empire that spanned the world. How could that be? Because that was the center of their operations, and therefore was the center of their empire. And so appropriately, the very symbol of the City of London, the financial district, the original City of London, where St. Paul's Cathedral is and all the financial stuff, where they've messed around with the global financial situation as we're currently experiencing, the symbol is two flying reptiles holding the shield of a very significant secret society within the Illuminati web called the Knights Templar that control London. Here it is. Very appropriate, and I would suggest not without coincidence, or not coincidence. When you pass into the City of London from the main urban sprawl of London and stuff, you pass these flying reptiles on each side of the road holding this Knights Templar shield. And the district of the City of London, which controls so much of world finance, runs into what is known as the Temple in London, which is named after a Knights Templar temple. And at the point, and that's where so much of the global, not just British, but the global and certainly the Commonwealth law network is controlled from. At the point where those two meet, the City of London and the Temple, is this flying reptile at the center of the road at a place called Temple Bar. And then when you look at the recurring themes of dragons and reptilian monster figures in myths and stories, they go on and on and on. And of course, the whole basis of the Chinese culture and many of the Eastern cultures is of the dragon. And yes, things like ley lines were symbolized as dragon lines and all the rest of it, but that's not the only explanation for it. Why would the ancient emperors of China say, we claim to be emperor because of our descendants from the ley lines? I mean, they wouldn't do that. They said descendants from the serpent gods. That was their symbolism of the serpent, the gods. The word Messiah comes from Messa, which is the fat of the Nile crocodile, which they used to use to anoint pharaohs. Christ itself means anointed one. And even the devil in the Bible is described as in reptilian terms. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil, and Satan, who deceiveth the whole world, he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And this theme of fallen angels, again, drops into this same theme of this takeover, which has been gathering pace through the centuries and now is where it is today. This is a painting by Credo Mutwa in South Africa, not far from the Kalahari Desert, which is a painting on his hut, which is symbolizing an ancient African story of the Chitahuri and how they ate people. And this is Alfa Romeo, which is straight from that ancient myth. I mean, why would Alfa Romeo have a bloody snake in a human? It's a bloody car. And next to it, of course, is the red cross on the white background of the Knights Templar Secret Society. This is a home of Silvio Berlusconi, who thinks after an earthquake disaster, just see it as having a weekend of camping. I mean, this man's not real, but he's leader of Italy. I don't know whether you saw that story. That's what he said, that the people in that earthquake zone should see it as a weekend of camping. I mean, you can't make these people up. They have no empathy. And again, here's that same theme. The fairy stories and the fairy tales of the frog turning into the prince and all these constant themes relates to the same stuff in the ancient world coming through to today. And this is a book that's given to some American school children, and it's about shape-shifting from reptilian into human. And they say I'm crazy, and they're giving it to school kids. Oh, it's just a story. No, it's not. I wish it was. And this is a point, and this has got me tremendous ridicule. I don't care, I'm bothered. But shape-shifting, right? This is another recurring theme, not just in the endless people now around the world who said, yeah, I saw that, I've experienced that, seeing someone move from a human to a reptilian form and back again. You find this too in the ancient accounts, the shapeshifters, and not just into reptilian, but into other forms as well. And then, again, I keep saying it, this is why the first part of this presentation was so important, because without that, we really can't get a fix on some of this stuff. People say, and I understand it completely, you can't shift from a solid body to a solid body and back again. It's daft. I agree completely. You can't. But that's not what's happening. These different physical forms are energetic fields. Let's go back to that, that image from earlier of the energy field. It goes through the decoding system and becomes an apparently physical form that we see in our everyday life. Shape-shifting takes place in one place only, in the decoding system of the brain, which again itself is a vibrational field beyond the physical. So you have an energy field that is human, and you're decoding that into a human body. Then the reptilian level of that comes forward and becomes the dominant field, and suddenly you're decoding a different energy field, and then it returns and you're decoding this one again. In your decoded reality in the experienced holographic physical world, you see someone human,